Living with reactive dogs and training them certainly comes with some challenges, but we love helping our clients successfully change how the dogs feel emotionally about all of these triggers so that they can get that well-mannered dog that they've been looking for. But lots of people give up too soon or try a program and say, this isn't for me. So that's why today we're going to share with you the top 6 mistakes that clients make when working on a reactive dog training program, and how you can make sure that you don't fall into that same pattern. I'm Chelsea with Positive Futures Dog Training and Behavior. If you're new to our channel, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. When working with reactive dogs, it's important to remember that this reactive behavior we see is an emotional response. These dogs have big feelings and are under a lot of stress. And that's why, when successfully training them, we need to make sure we bring something very valuable to the table. When dogs get stressed, not only does their appetite decrease, but their ability to pay attention and respond to us does as well. You will make more progress in your training plan if you bring the big guns to the table. So even if your dog might work for kibble or dried processed treats in the house, we recommend bringing out diced chicken, cheese, hot dog, fish, whatever your highest value reinforcer is when you're working on your reactive dog training. Mistake number 2 is mixing up the timing. There are certainly times where we want to use food as a lure or as a distraction to get the dog to move with us in our direction, but we want to make sure that we're not relying on that. If we do, the food will become a predictor of the trigger, and we can turn our dogs away from liking food. Instead, we need to change how our dog feels about the trigger, which means the trigger comes first and predicts the food. So each time the dog sees the trigger or hears the trigger, we pair it with high-value food. So make sure that your timing is correct in order to change that emotional response. Trigger, then food. Mistake number 3 is that we go in guns a-blazing. When working with our reactive dogs, it's really important that we set them up for success. While it might be easy to incorporate things like waiting at the door and coming when called into our normal routine, when we work on reactivity, it's important that we do structured setups. This way, we can control how intense that trigger is to help keep our dogs under threshold. So when we're working inside with something like knocking at the door or the sound of a doorbell, we can control the volume that the dog hears the trigger. When we're working outside with something like cats, dogs, or people, we can control proximity to the trigger as well as how animated that trigger is. This is important in keeping our dogs under threshold or within their tolerance. We need dogs to remain reaction-free during reactivity training in order to help them build new positive associations with the triggers and change that emotional response that they have. When that emotional response is changed, we then can change that behavior. So whenever starting your reactivity program, try to think about ways that you can set your dog up for success by controlling that trigger, starting easy in a structured session so that your dog can remain reaction-free and build those positive associations. Mistake number 4 is not paying enough attention to our dog. Most people understand the big difference between a very happy dog with loose, wiggly body language and a dog that's really upset, that might be barking, growling, and lunging. But lots of people miss out on those in-between signals that really let us know how the dog is feeling as they approach that threshold before they go over it. A few signals you should look out for include stiffening of the body and staring, yawning, licking lips, and turning the head away from you or the distraction, including avoidance, stiff body, tail tucked, a single paw raise, and leaning away, dropped head, dropped ears, licking lips, and ducking. Your dog might begin to take treats a little more harshly, run to the end of the leash, be unable to respond to any cues or even take food from you. You might even see raised hair or hackles on the back of your dog. These are all signals that your dog is approaching their threshold or their tolerance, and we need to make sure that we disengage or turn away from that trigger before we reach that threshold. So being mindful of your dog's body language, as well as the body language of any other dogs that you might be working with, will help you keep your dog under threshold and in a good place of learning. Mistake number 5, allowing your dog exposure to the trigger when outside of a training session. For all of our reactive dogs, it's important that we identify the triggers and then figure out how to use management to prevent the reactions from happening. Signs on the door, disabling doorbells, closing blinds and shades outside of the main living room, X-pens, baby gates, crates, music to drown out external noises, and even space outside or hiding behind visual barriers can all allow our dog to experience life without experiencing the reactions. Using management to prevent these reactions is important in the beginning stages of the training plan to make sure that the reactions don't happen more and become normal. Instead, we want those structured training sessions at low intensity to help our dog build positive associations so that we can start rewarding more desirable behaviors. And mistake number 6, removing the food from the picture too quickly. It's important that we use the food in the training program until we can change how the dog feels about the trigger. We have to create something called a CER, or a conditioned emotional response. This means that the food has followed the trigger often enough that the dog no longer feels fear or stress when they see or hear the trigger, but instead feel happy and excited. For example, when we start to knock on the door and the dog starts to wag their tail instead of showing signs of stress. Once you've changed how your dog emotionally feels about the trigger, their behavior will change as well. That trigger will no longer mean that your dog is barking and lunging. Instead, your dog feels happy, so we've eliminated that barking behavior. It's important to know that you can take it one step further after you've created that conditioned emotional response and start focusing on behavior instead of emotions. For example, you can turn that signal of knocking into a cue for your dog to go find their bed instead. Or if you're out on a loose leash walk, turn the sight of a dog into an indicator that your dog should pay attention to you. If you need more help on this next step, check out the card and the link in the descriptions. And there you have it. Those are the top 6 mistakes that we see from clients when they're trying to work on a reactive dog training program. Be sure to use high-value treats and make sure that the trigger is what predicts the food. Start easy with structured setups and make sure that you're observing your dog's body language, only increasing the difficulty of the training setup as your dog tells you it's okay. Avoid triggers when you're outside of training sessions by using management, and make sure that you keep using that food until you've changed not only your dog's emotions, but also their behavior. If you need more help in your reactive dog training program, I think that you'll like this playlist here made just for you.